welcome to another episode of the Dgmg podcast. Thank you for tuning in. This episode is going to be a lot of fun. It is going to be a little bit different since we are in the postseason now. The regular season of the NFL is already done, which is actually insane. I feel like it just started this year even. This year has flown by. I'm pretty much just planning on doing playoff predictions and then ranking the quarterbacks that are still in the playoffs right now. So I don't have a top 10 this week. A couple things are going to be replacing it, and then I just have a couple takeaways here and there. I'm super excited for this episode, so without further ado, let's get into it. The first thing I want to talk about and highlight, and I've said it already, I don't think Joe Burrow should be forgotten in the MVP conversation. Obviously, it's between Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, who honestly both deserve it. Saquon should even be in the conversation. This year for offenses in general has been just absolutely insane. Saquon had over 2,000 yards, so close to breaking the record. I honestly don't have any strong feelings about the Eagles sitting him. I mean, Jalen Hurts is out right now with a concussion. Maybe he'll be back for wild card week, but we really don't know. And that entire offense relies on Saquon, so for them to just protect him, especially in his past, like he's had injuries, so protecting him I think is, it wasn't a bad idea. I can defend that. And then Josh Allen has been great. I almost see Josh Allen getting the MVP over Lamar Jackson just because Lamar has gotten it twice already. But if you look at Lamar's stats, it should go to him. And for half the season, I was standing by the fact that I do think it would go to Josh Allen. Maybe that's a little bit of just Josh Allen bias for me, but objectively it should go to Lamar Jackson. Lamar broke records this year. The offense is looking great. Has over 4,000 yards, over 40 touchdowns. And then you cap that off with all of the rushing yards he has. He's looked amazing. And then Josh Allen, again, came in with Bills' expectations being pretty low. I'm not surprised they're in the playoffs. I still think they could be, but he brought a team that definitely had lower expectations after losing key players in the offense, and he's looked awesome. He's done some things that not many guys can do. So I wouldn't be mad if it goes to either of them, but I do think that Joe Burrow should be in the conversation. And craziest thing I saw today as well with how bad that defense is, Trey Hendrickson led the league in sacks, which is insane. And then not even that offense is insane. Joe Burrow led the league in passing yards, and Jamar Chase led the league in receiving yards. It honestly kind of reminds me of the Chargers team when they had the number one offense and number one defense and just did not have a successful season, just because of how bad other parts of the team are. So that's definitely going to have to be something that the Bengals touch on in the offseason. I just think it's insane. Joe Burrow should definitely be in the MVP conversation. I mean, he's had an insane year, a career year for him. For him not to make the playoffs is just, that's really unfortunate. And then another thing I want to touch on, this year has had so many record-breaking players and situations. Brock Bowers broke rookie records for tight ends. Lots of rookie records broken for rookie quarterbacks. Lamar Jackson, of course, broke records. I think at this point with them adding games, and they're still even considering adding more, I think there should be a different scale on how you rank records. Obviously, it's hard with over 100 years of history in the NFL, but I mean, these players are having an extra game or two. If you go far back enough, multiple games extra to break these records and get more points. I think almost basing everything off of like average yards, because then I think that would be a little bit more close to records. I mean, Mike Evans, no matter what, either way, getting 1,000 yards a season, even with an extra game, even last season, that's insane. I think it's 11 straight seasons for Mike Evans to have over 1,000 receiving yards, which he's an amazing receiver. I don't think those extra 2 games would do much. However, we saw this past week in the final seconds of the game, he tied that record, getting 1,000 receiving yards again this season. So I think that's also just something to think about. It's almost unfair to these other players, in my opinion. But moving on to quarterback rankings in the playoffs, the top half of the quarterbacks in the league are on the AFC, in my opinion, or most of them. Starting with the AFC, I do have Lamar Jackson at first. This is going to be out of 7 for both sides. But at number 1 for the AFC quarterbacks, I have Lamar Jackson. Like I said, he's having an insane year, over 40 total touchdowns, 4,000 receiving yards, and then that's not even adding on the rushing yards he has. So he's just having an insane year. At second, I think this is a no-brainer. I have Josh Allen. those are the top two candidates in the MVP race. So obviously they're going to be number 1 and 2 in the AFC. Again, this is based off this year alone, so that's why Mahomes isn't in that conversation. He's had a bit of a down year for him, but if it was anybody else, he'd be having one of the best years of their career. Mahomes, I do have at number 3. He's just barely edging out Justin Herbert in my opinion, but that could really go back and forth. Justin Herbert's only had 3 interceptions this entire year, which I actually think is insane, especially with the weapons he had coming into the season. Ladd McConkey stepped up. He's been really good, but that Chargers team in general has looked really solid. I'll get more into that a bit later once I show you my playoff predictions. At the next spot, I have Bo Nix. Bo Nix, for a rookie, has just looked absolutely insane. His stats are really close to C.J. Stroud. Obviously, C.J. Stroud is in a sophomore slump, has a couple less touchdowns, but Bo Nix has looked actually insane. He's broken a lot of records this season as well. I do want to bring up the fact that he did play backup Chiefs players in the final week to get him 4 more touchdowns, so that might be, not that it's stat padding. I don't think it's stat padding at all because they were playing to win the game because, playoffs are on the line, but that is just something to keep in mind when you're looking at stats. At number 6, I do have C.J. Stroud. Even in his sophomore slump, I think he's played pretty solid. That offensive line has dealt with injuries, has dealt with problems. He's had to deal with that. I think that definitely plays a part. And then, of course, the injuries to the receivers. That whole offense was just going back and forth with their players all year. So I think that definitely has a part in his play. He's still been solid. Sophomore slump, yes, but it was a solid year for him. It was decent. And then finally I have Wilson. He only played 11 games this year, but the Steelers are on a 4-game losing streak. I really don't see anything like that turning around. And it's a lot of competition with quarterbacks in the playoffs this year with how many of them are playing so well. Moving on to NFC, I have Goff at number 1. I still think Goff is a top 5 quarterback this year, so he's easily going to be at number 1. And then, surprisingly enough, as I mentioned, I stick by the fact that I think Sam Darnold was a top 5 quarterback this year. However, I do have Mayfield above him just from this last week. I mean, Sam Darnold was definitely struggling in that game against the Lions, the depleted Lions team. I think he'll step up in the playoffs against the Rams, but I do have Sam Darnold at 3 with Mayfield at 2. Mayfield also is a super underrated player this season. I think he should be in MVP conversations. He's had an insane year with a Bucs team that really didn't have a lot of expectations coming into the season, and I'll get more into them later as well. At number 4, I do have Jordan Love. He's played 15 games, has been in and out a little bit this season. However, he does have nearly the same stats as a guy like Jaden Daniels, so I do have him ranked slightly below, even with those games he wasn't in. And mind you, you could look at this latest week. Jaden Daniels didn't play much against the Cowboys, but neither did Jordan Love. So you could almost say that Jordan Love only played 14 games, where Jaden Daniels technically played 16. With nearly the same stats, I do have Jordan Love a step higher. I think Jaden Daniels also has better weapons. Jordan Love's receivers like Christian Watson, Dobbs, and everything, they've been in and out of the lineup most of the season. And then at number 6, I do have Jaden Daniels. Again, for a rookie, this rookie class is going to be historic. The top 5 quarterbacks have all been really solid. Of course, Michael Penix hasn't played. J.J. McCarthy hasn't really played much either. But this quarterback class is insane. The rookie class in general has been insanely impressive. Jaden Daniels, I do have at 6. And then Jalen Hurts, I have at 7. This was almost hard to rank because I don't think Jalen Hurts really deserves that 7th spot, but these other 6 quarterbacks, in my opinion, have been better this season, especially with that Eagles team relying on Saquon Barkley so much. And then all the weapons that the Eagles have as well, I think, definitely plays a part. And then finally, moving on to playoff predictions. In the first round, I have the Bills winning over the Broncos. Broncos are just going to be inexperienced with Bo Nix as a rookie. The Bills are one of the best teams in the league this year. I think no-brainer. I think the Bills are going to be beating the Broncos. I have the Ravens over the Steelers. The Steelers have had a 4-game losing streak, and that could be due to who they've played, but they have not looked promising, and I really don't see them turning anything around before these playoffs next week. So I have the Ravens over the Steelers. I have the Chargers over the Texans. Just again, I feel like the Texans are almost in a slump. They haven't met expectations, in my opinion. I think I expected them to have a better record this season, being one of the top 5, top 10 teams in the league. They're borderline top 10 this year, in my opinion. And the Chargers being led by Jim Harbaugh, Justin Herbert, and that squad. With that defense, the Chargers' defense has looked really good this year. I think the Chargers pull an upset over the Texans. And then for the divisional round for the AFC, I do have the Chiefs over the Chargers. I think the Chargers, next year or a year or two from now can definitely make a deeper run. Call it what you want, but I do think the Chiefs are still a pretty solid team this year despite their close wins. I think that actually shows that they are a good team, better team than some of these others that they will be playing. And then I have the Bills over the Ravens. This is again a toss-up. A lot of these AFC teams like the Chiefs, Bills, and Ravens. Really, I could see any one of them in the Super Bowl. I do have the Bills over the Ravens in this one. And then for the championship round, this is truly 50-50 in my opinion. I just really have a feeling the Chiefs are going to go back to the Super Bowl for a third year in a row over the Bills. The Chiefs just own the Bills in the playoffs. I don't really see much of it changing, but it's really 50-50. I'd love to see the Bills in the Super Bowl. Josh Allen and that team really deserves it. And then on the NFC side, I have the Eagles beating the Packers. Packers are the youngest team in the league, which is just insane to me that they even are in the playoffs and are this good, and especially in the division that they're in. That being said, I just think they're a little inconsistent at this point, and the Eagles are just unstoppable. If you stop Saquon Barkley, you have Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, a lot of other options on offense for whichever quarterback is in. Even without Jalen Hurts, they've been scoring 30 points a game. So that's a really scary team to look out for. And then I have the Bucs over Washington. This is mainly just because of the inexperience for the Commanders. I think the Buccaneers with Baker Mayfield are going to be a big underdog. He's a top 6 to 7 quarterback in my opinion. So I do have an upset over Washington. And then I have the Vikings over the Rams. The Rams are going to bounce back after that game against the Lions. Try to go for a revenge game against the Lions in the divisional round. I do see them beating the Rams. And then for the divisional round, I have the Eagles over the Buccaneers. Eagles, again, are one of the top teams in the league, top 5. Lions over Vikings. I also have, unfortunately, I don't think the Vikings are going to get their revenge game that they're hoping for. Sam Darnold kind of looked like a deer in headlights at some points in that game. They didn't score a single touchdown. It sounds like David Montgomery is going to be coming back in the divisional round as well at this point in time. So getting that duo back, I think is going to be effective for the Lions as well. Heading into the championship round, I do think the Lions are going to overcome their injuries and get to the Super Bowl. Maybe even get Aiden Hutchinson back. That'd be really cool to see. And then in the Super Bowl, drum roll please, I have the Lions over the Chiefs. I don't think the Chiefs are going to be getting that three-peat. And the Lions, they're hard-fought, big heart of a team. I think the Lions are going to beat the Chiefs. And, that's all I have for you guys today. Don't get me going. Thank you guys for listening. And please join me next week for another episode.